Bound for master. In a penthouse suite 150 feet above the floor. Are the bondage tools he likes to use stuffed in the top drawer? Meet Mr. Master's a real tough bastard as he opens up the door. To a slave on her knees ready to please, she crawls in on his floor. Once the door is closed, he quickly shows her the contents of the drawer. He said, "You ready to please sit back on your knees, you filthy whore?" She said yes, but was corrected and addressed to say master, and pins her back against the door. His hand on her throat, she began to choke and her throat got a little sore. A crack of a whip against her clit, her cough turned to a scream. When he did it again, she tried to bend, but his hand prevented the lean. He told his slave to open her legs as he dropped the whip, took his hand from her throat and lit a smoke as he grabbed a clip. He gave her pussy lip a pinch and it was drenched, making it hard to sick the clip. So he rubbed the clip on her clit and told his slave to give a lick. With the taste of her pussy wet and mushy, he clipped it to her tongue. He rubbed her again, put a finger in as cum started to run. As he dusted out his smoke, he grabbed up a rope and tied her hands and feet behind her back. With what was left of the rope, he wrapped on her throat, then gave her pussy a smack. Kissed her on her lips, then with his fingertip he started to tease the hole. The cum would run that was for his slave, so between her legs he left a bowl. At 2 knuckles deep she stated to leap, cause his slave was pretty tight. He stuck them all the way in the moaning beings, but she was his slave for the night. After 10 mins, when he was finished, he pulled his soggy fingers out. She was covered in sweat and out of breath, and he shoved them into her mouth. She never refuses, she swallowed the juices he put in her mouth. When that he seen his fingers were clean, then he took them out. She was biting her bottom lip when he pulled out his dick and rubbed the tip just under her nose. Then he lit up a candle he set on the mantel and watched as the flame rose. When he took the clip from her tounge, it made the cum run a little more. With the clip he gave it a flick and saw it drop to the floor. The wax was hot, melted on top and covered most of the wick. So he gave it a shake and it didn't take but second to put the flame out quick. He covered her nipple tips with a few drips, then poured the rest on her cheek. With her to nudge out, he put his cock in her mouth, then ordered her to speak. She tried to talk around his cock, but the tip was in too deep. Saliva bubbles between her lips and his dick is the only thing that would seep. When his cock wasn't there, she would gasp for air followed by coughing. But it didn't last long and her head was back on and her mouth was all frothy. He knew he wouldn't last watching his slave grasp, so he removed his cock just in case. She had tears in her eyes come down her thighs and mascara all over her face. He liked the thought of his slave on his cock, so when he stopped he got mad. But he wasn't about to let her rest her mouth, so he strapped on a ball gag. Her clit is very swollen, the cum continues falling as the bowl begins to fill. Her heart is racing as her tits are facing a tracing wheel. His slave's about to squirt as her master goes to work rolling the spikes across her nipples. She can't hold it when her stomach sinks in and her pussy just dribbles. With a rope on her throat and a gag in her mouth, she was bound for air. So he pinched her nose all the way closed, her heartbeat rose, she was really scared. Then he let go after a second or so and asked, "Who's your master?" Moving her cheeks, she tried to speak, then he slapped her. He took out the gag, bent her back and put his thumb in her ass, and she really screamed. He pinched her taint and like wet paint her pussy just creamed. Now the bowl was full of cum and drool and his thumb was still in her ass. So he pulled back the bowl away from her hole and used his thumb really fast. He untied his slave just in the legs so he could stand her up. So he turned her around, bent her down, and shoved his cock in her butt. She was screaming, her pussy was steaming, and he had a hold of her hair. He pulled her in with a hug, and as he pushed through and fucked her till he was there. Almost done and ready to come, he pulls his dick from her butt. He said, "Choke on this, you fucking bitch," and forced her to swallow his nut. She was back on her knees with cum in her cheeks, and it was more than she could hold. Then he tied her back up and carried his little slut naked out in the cold. Cold with the shakes, her mouth still full of his paste. He said, "I'll come get you in an hour, but fist is your shower," and poured the bowl on her face. An hour perused and he grabbed his ice cube and started again. It lasted all night, his slave didn't fight, and that is the end.